All right, Scorp. So resurrection seems to be making its rounds. And this time it flew out of the deck here for you guys. But with facade, it's a little different. Like the energy between the two is a little bit hard, but there's understanding now where resurrection is coming in, because for me, that's just, it's a given with Scorpio with the life cycle. But we will get into this. So Scorpio, this week from Le Vampire, you pulled resurrection, repraise, recovery, and comeback. And then from Chakra Wisdom, you pulled facade. Now, resurrection, the blessing says this change can be made and swiftly. Ask for assistance and it will be yours. Let go now and move swiftly through the transition. Working with this card talks about how now is the time to make things happen for yourself. It's time to actively explore what you have always denied yourself the chance to do. And it's saying that look within and see what has less than satisfied you. And know that something that you have thought was over, done with, and decided is truly about to surprise you. But I think the recovery and the comeback that's coming through with resurrection has to do with facade. Now, the very first quote for this card says, "This isn't who I am." The inspiration says, if you are unhappy in your relationships, you may be relating to others through a false sense of duty. Give up being something you're not. The personal question, though, asks, what have I done to heal my childhood pain? The key ideas are disassociating from yourself, reclaiming your life, and healing childhood pain. Now, if it comes to relationships, the recovery here and the comeback is realizing that, you don't have to stay in relationships where you feel like you have to be something that you're not. Again, feeling obligated, right? That false sense of duty. Now, on the other hand, for some of you, what's being resurrected here. All right, Scorp, here we go. Here's the energy coming through. Strength. Strength is a beautiful card. I do love seeing strength, but immediately for me, I'm like, why? Why? Why are you needing to pull on that reserve? Strength is asking you to deal with things with gentle force and patience and grace. But it's saying that there's going to be a need here for you to start pulling on that strength. And in the past, the world, wow. So in the past, a successful completion is what I love about the world. Now, there is that feeling of success, but it being the end of the majors, it's a major ending for you and a new beginning for sure. But it's saying that something has completed itself out successfully, which is a good thing. But I'm still looking at strength here. And in the present, the Knight of Coins. Okay. All right. So just between the three, when you're looking at the Knight of Coins, first of all, it is about moving a little bit slower. But to me, there's a feeling here of moving forward with a little bit of caution. The Knight of Coins, and when I describe this card to people in terms of, the personality, the difference here between the Knight of Coins and like the Knight of Wands, for example. The Knight of Wands isn't really looking at, the long term. They're not looking at the consequences of their actions. The Knight of Coins is different. They're not about original thinking here. They're doing things in a methodical way, in a way that they know is going to work for them to see the results that they want. Now, financially, these are fantastic messages. But I get the sense that for some of you, you're moving forward with a little bit more caution and a little bit more awareness, of what you're doing. You're not moving forward here with just some quick, fast-paced, passionate action. You're doing it in a way where, you're thinking about what the consequences of the actions are going to be. Now, future conditions, the Two of Wands, and, it's making decisions on how to proceed. When you're looking at the Two of Wands, right, you hold your own world in your hands. What are you going to do with it? Where are you going to go? And a lot of times when you see this card in some decks, you'll see the crossroads. What path am I going to take here? And again, it goes back to that energy of the Knight of Coins where you're moving forward with a little bit of caution here. And it's like you're really thinking about what your next steps are going to be before you actually take them. And it's not bad. I am getting like this sinking feeling here where, you know, because I'm still looking at strength and I'm going, you know, that's great. That's great. Having strength to go through, you know, slower moving energy, you know, planning things out a little bit better, which is really good, especially after a major completion with the world. But I don't know. I don't know why. Your best path to follow, the Hermit. So maybe needing to take some time away from the outside noise. The Hermit for me, especially in this position, is saying that, you know, this is a time for some soul searching during some solitude. You know, not really listening to the outside noise and what's being said, especially when you're looking at facade. If you feel like you haven't been true to yourself, you know, the Hermit is a perfect energy here. And the majors, I mean, you know, I'm looking at it going, geez. So for some of you, you know, especially if you feel like you need to move forward with caution, you know, before you decide to do anything, you know, you're really going to have to dig deep here with the Hermit and really look for those answers that are within, right? But I feel strongly here that you're going to have to push out the outside noise of the world, right? What other people are saying, everything else that's going on. You know, like for me, one of my biggest blocks is, you know, paying attention to the news to such a degree where, you know, it affects me. And I have a hard time, you know, dealing with other things, basically trying not to be inundated by what is going on in the outside world. So, you know, however that's playing out with you, if it's having to deal with things on the world stage, dealing with your career, dealing with just people in your life, basically the Hermit is saying now is a time for silence and a time for you to really dig deep and meditate here. There it is. In your environment, the Ten of Wands, that's kind of where that feeling was coming through. Now, for some of you, if you're feeling overwhelmed, it makes sense that you're moving forward a little bit more slowly. So basically what it's saying is that you're needing to take some time for yourself. If you've gone through a major completion and you're looking at new beginnings here, the major thing that you need to, you know, take from this, just from what you're pulling, is that before you start again, you're going to want to move a little bit more slower. You're going to want to think about what your next steps are going to be for sure. But you're also going to need to take some time for yourself. You know, you don't want to be going forward and overwhelming yourself to the point where you start to like procrastinate, you know, or just stop completely with the Knight of Coins being there. You know, just be careful about working to the point where you get so overwhelmed with everything that's going on. You know, and that's where the reserve is coming through here, the strength to continue working, to continue doing things here. But why though? You know, and that's where the Hermit comes in. Why are you doing this? You know, I really do think that for some of you, you just need to take some time for yourself here with the Hermit. You know, that one of the big things with Scorpio that a lot of people, you know, have trouble understanding is that, you know, even in relationships, we can be extremely happy, but our partners have a hard time understanding that we need some time to ourselves. And it's not because we're not unhappy, and it's not because there's, you know, a bunch of bad stuff going on. It's just that we need that time alone to process the emotions. And for you, it looks like a work situation. You know, for some of you, if you're working yourself into exhaustion, you know, the Hermit is going to be exactly what you need. Your hopes and your fears, the Page of Cups. So, you know, for me looking at it, especially with the Knight of Coins, first of all, the Page of Cups is new emotional experiences. You know, there are offers being made there too. but it's also about communicating the way that you feel, especially if you're feeling something that is new to you. You know, and that may be where the processing needs to come in here with the Hermit. If you're feeling something that you may have not experienced before, for Scorpio, there's a need to really sit with it and process it. Now, as a hope, it is about experiencing something new that is emotionally uplifting for you, especially with the Ten of Wands being there. It kind of has a feeling that, you know, if you start working towards something and you get a little bit overwhelmed, it's like the hope is to remind yourself that, you know, this may be a new experience here with the Page of Cups, but, you know, it's supposed to be, you know, a good thing, like a good, lighthearted, emotional thing here, right? And there just needs to be that kind of like reminder. You know, but I think a lot of you are being a little bit cautious. You know, you may be weighing yourself down here with the Ten of Wands, but I'm not seeing the Page of Cups as a bad thing. I just think that for a lot of you, it's just going to be some new things that you're going to have to process here. Oh, very nice, very nice. Beautiful. It's perfect. Now, when you're looking at it lining up this way, you're definitely doing the right thing. The Two of Wands is suggesting that you're going to take the right action that's going to lead to this Ace of Coins coming out, which is perfect. You know, and there is your new beginning out of the world. So basically here, I think it's going to be important for Scorpio to, you know, not work so much to the point where you're overwhelmed. You know, especially if you feel cautious about the new things that you're doing. But you have to remember the reason why you're doing this is because it's new and it offers, you know, a new chance here to experience more lighthearted emotions around what you are working toward. You know, you're definitely taking the right action, but I do think that a lot of you are going to have to take a time out. You know, remember why you decided to do this, you know. But it leading out to the Ace of Coins looks fantastic. It's realistic and it is practical. And between the Knight of Coins and the Ace of Coins, it is fantastic. The financial opportunity there is beautiful. You know, and in terms of relationships, you know, you're moving forward with a little bit more caution here, especially if, you know, there are new emotions, whether it's a new relationship or something new that you're experiencing within a relationship. I just think that, you know, there's going to be a need here for you to take some time out to process everything. But where you're coming out at looks perfect. It's perfect. All right, Scorpio, we're going to take a look at the soul trees to see what other messages we can get for you guys. But I do like seeing the Ace of Coins. And I've always said this, as much as I love the Ace of Cups, I like the Ace of Coins better because it's real. It's real, it's practical, and it has the potential to be long-lasting. And that, to me, is, you know, more important than having fleeting emotional experiences, no matter how good they are. Confidence, energy, and teach. Wow. Confidence, having confidence in yourself, especially with, you know, where you're moving here. And then energy, having new energy around you. Again, new experiences, things that you may need to process. But teach, you know, teaching by example. If you have something that you can teach to others, definitely, absolutely, it's so important to, you know, pass on that information, right? Knowledge is power. You know, as cheesy as it sounds, it's important to teach each other, you know, especially if you have wisdom that you can pass on that is going to be of importance to somebody else. All right, Scorpio, we're going to take a look at Whispers of Love to see what messages we can get to help you attract love in your life. And get to know each other. Learning to meet another's need for love is important for a relationship to grow. So for some of you, you know, when it comes to the relationship, right, it's so important. It's so important. The problem is, though, for Scorpio, when you're getting to know somebody else, you have a tendency to not kind of like reveal things about yourself either. So that goes both ways. You know, if you're going to take the time to get to know somebody, you got to let them get to know you too, right? You can still keep your secrets, But, you know, the energy is beautiful, right? And have faith. Have faith that, you know, you're making the right choices here. Don't overwhelm yourself because things look perfect coming out of this. All right, Scorpio. So with the world coming in as the past coming through, you know, I do feel like that is where resurrection is coming in. And I think some of you are completing this cycle here where you're done not being true to who you are. But I think you're moving forward here with a little bit of caution. You're definitely taking the right action for sure. But then I think that you guys are overwhelming yourselves and you're working a little bit too hard here. You know, and I really do feel like with the Page of Cups being here, you know, there is a need to like remember why you started doing this in the first place, because you completed something big out and you're starting something new here, but this is suggesting the new emotional experience, you know, and it's in your hopes and fears. So the Hermit being your best path to follow definitely is the right way to go. I do think that a lot of you need to take a time out here to just kind of process everything and to like cancel out the outside noise. You know, Scorpio needs that alone time, that solitude to just kind of let everything flow through. You go through the depths, you dig it out, and you come out clean on the other side, right? So I think that the Hermit is the right thing to do because I don't think some of you see this yet. You know, I mean, it's coming, right? And it looks great, especially with the Knight of Coins. Between the two, it's beautiful, fantastic as far as financial goes, especially, and work. So you look good coming out, but I do think that the reason why, you know, again, you're having to pull on that reserve here is because it's a new experience. And, you know, with Scorpio being a fixed sign, it makes sense, right? Now, in terms of the soul tree's confidence, confidence in yourself with the new energy that you're experiencing, but then teach. And I like that that showed up for you guys. So if you have wisdom, it's so important to give that wisdom to other people and to teach, right? Especially if it's of value to another person that's going to like make their life easier, you know. So definitely, you know, teach by example. Now, as far as whispers of love, have faith. Yes, have faith, right? Have faith in the situation, not just in work, but in relationships too, and then get to know each other, right? So important. And, you know, Scorpio, right? You keep your secrets, and that's okay. But, you know, when you're like investigating another person here, you got to make sure that, you know, they kind of get to know you as well too.